Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you guys for coming tonight. I'm Dylan. Finally good to put a face to a name on Slack. I know it's been a hectic week for everybody. Just trying to get some of this stuff nailed down. And so really glad for you guys to be here this evening.
Can I ask one question, please?
Yeah.
Is the meeting that is supposed to be a group meeting?
Yeah, it can be. We encourage all the online students to come and participate in this online training. We record it and we post it on YouTube. But this won't be a group meeting with your individual groups, but more of like a online training for the ALPS basic program.
Okay.
Cool. So I have a presentation that I will go over tonight. But I figured since it's been such a kind of crazy week, we should just start off with questions and then get into the presentation after that. So I'd just like to open up the floor for questions right now. And so if you have any questions, let's try to get those answered. Kyle, how's it going? Kyle, what's up? I don't know if we could hear you. Anyhow, we just opened the floor for questions. So you guys should have all been kind of split into your groups. Have you guys all met with your clients yet?
Yeah, our group has.
Okay, cool. Cool. What about Mariah?
No, I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
My group hasn't heard anything yet.
Your group hasn't heard anything yet? Okay, thanks, Michael.
Yeah, most of our group mates don't respond. The only thing I've heard from one of us.
Yeah, that'll be an issue. We'll try to get that solved. We're gonna have an influx of new students by the end of the week. And so hopefully we'll be able to populate some of the more ghost town teams with some active students.
Okay.
What about Brittany? You said your group hasn't met yet.
No, we met this morning.
Okay. Oh, you guys have met this morning.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. And then Amraya Ba.
We are scheduled to meet with our client tomorrow.
Okay, cool. And Susanna, has your team met?
Not yet, so we're gonna meet tomorrow too.
Perfect, cool. Okay, so is there no lasting questions? Everybody's gotten kind of assigned to a group? You've all chosen your kind of roles that you're gonna have within the group.
I just had a question.
Yeah, go for it.
How is the client supposed to reach out to us?
So the client should be reaching out to one of the people on your team by email.
Okay, so if I specifically haven't heard anything, that's okay. They might have reached out to someone else.
Yeah, sometimes that might be the case, or sometimes they'll reach out to all you guys. It kind of depends on how. So I wasn't in charge of putting the groups together and the clients. Like I wasn't part of the team that put you guys together. So that kind of depends.
Okay.
If you haven't heard by your clients by the end of this week, we should all be kind of reaching out. Some of you guys should have already received also project mentors. We're still working on getting project mentors for several of the teams. Those students will be able to help you out the most throughout the project. They're gonna kind of, if you guys remember last week from the training, they're going to be kind of the acting project managers for each of you guys. So there's still some of you guys should have gotten project managers and they should have introduced themselves to you. They'll kind of be a guiding hand throughout the process. But if you haven't, don't worry yet. We're still getting those. I guess we're getting those planned out. Excellent. Is there any other questions?
Hey, so I'm sorry I got on late. I had some technical difficulties. I couldn't hear when I
You're
got on.
fine, man. No worries.
So I haven't heard anything from our client yet. Is that normal?
So if you haven't heard anything by the end of this week, we'll probably reach out. We'll probably reach out again. But that's okay for right now. If you haven't heard anything, let's just hold tight. You guys
Okay.
should have all gotten like a project scope that you might understand what company you're already going to do your analysis for. So just start reading up on the company, become familiar with what they've wanted in the past, what they might want this semester, and any questions that you guys might have when you do have the client meeting. But yeah, let's just sit tight for the meantime.
Sounds good. Just want to make sure nothing's wrong.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. That's good. That's a great question. Thank you. Cool. Well, as we kind of go through this, like, please feel free to raise your hand. I think you could add in the chat. You could send a message if you have a question. I'll answer it. If you want to get off, unmute, and ask a question, that's totally fine with me. We'll just kind of go through some of the training. We'll go through what data collection looks like, what good data is today, and hopefully try to get your questions answered on what kind of resources you might be using and stuff like that. So let me share my screen here. Okay, just quick technical check. Can everybody see my screen, the current presentation that's up on it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Alrighty, so yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So today we're just gonna kind of go over some of the timeline, once again, touch on the responsibility, and then we'll kind of go into some resources and the best way to kind of go about really getting the valuable research that you're gonna wanna find for your client. So all of this, if you don't have a copy of this, please reach out. This is kind of a schedule for what the semester should look like. So we're in the week 3. The first 2 weeks have kind of been like this training. You guys have introduced yourselves to your teams, and we're trying to get up on the contacts with the clients. The only difference is that they're going to be reaching out to you this time instead of you reaching out to them. So that's been the kind of the first 2 weeks, and then hopefully by this week we can kind of set up a client meeting and start doing some research, start getting into the data. Hopefully your team lead will reach out. Your project mentor should be reaching out and setting up a meeting with the team lead or the entire team and kind of just going over a strategy. And then the team lead should prepare kind of a research plan that they'll give to the project manager at some point. So that'll be within the next week here. But yeah, going forward, a big chunk of the time is going to be dedicated to research, gathering data, looking at some of the different resources we'll talk about, and then kind of closing in on the end of the semester. We're going to look at a short analysis period, and then any type of follow-up research or anything we might need to kind of tie up to give to the client. And yeah, so it's kind of crazy because it's a fast pace. It's almost like a sprint for you guys. It's not a lot of time to go from week 3 to week 13 and present a final deliverable, but you guys could do it. Totally believe in you guys. But at times it'll also feel kind of like a marathon, especially during this research phase. Finding good data is oftentimes hard. And so once again, that'll be something we kind of talk about today. Are there any questions kind of right now about the kind of the calendar, the forecasted milestones?
I just put it in the chat, but who do we reach out to get the timeline?
Let's post it on the Slack. It should be on. So I'm aware. I'm under the impression that it should be on the iLearn But if it's not, we need to put it up there. Because there should have been like a training email that was sent out, like with some resources and stuff, kind of at the beginning of the semester. This should have been a part of it.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
I got an email this week that has someone sharing a Google Drive with me, and it has a lot of information on it, including the schedule.
Okay, perfect. Did everybody else get that, or was that? We just want to make sure everybody's getting this.
I got the email with the link to the drive, but I don't know if there's anything in it.
Okay.
I can just look and see really quick if that's okay.
Yeah, I could take a look as well here.
Okay, yeah, it looks like there's nothing in it right now, just folders that are empty.
Okay, so Susanna, that's going to be where you'll put everything for your project, like all the data, the deliverables and stuff like that.
Right.
Let me.
I just checked mine, the one that's called intern resources, and that has all the information. I think the other folder is specifically for your team to put whatever you want in.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to pull up, was the intern resources folder. That should be in the link that was sent.
Okay, perfect. I
You
see that now. Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect. That's where that's where this is all gonna be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, sorry. My Chrome was being really slow right there. So, okay. So kind of just retouching back on some of the daily and weekly responsibilities for the online students, a little hard. Make sure that you guys are always using Slack. I know it was mentioned previously that, sometimes people aren't reaching back out. It's hard to get an answer. And yeah, that's that's really hard, especially for online students where, we can't really do the face-to-face communication as often. But like, try to use Slack as much as you can. The more emails and texting that you can minimize, I think is going to be better. Just holding like all the conversations on Slack, it'll just hold it all in one place. It'll be a lot easier to just kind of see the total communication going on. So make an effort to use the Slack as much as you can. And then just continue the communication with your teammates. That's kind of the daily responsibilities. And then the weekly responsibilities is attending this weekly workshop. So either the online, if you're here on campus and have time to go to the campus one, go to that one. Also, we'll be posting the YouTube videos as well for those. Hopefully, and also you guys could try to meet with your group at least once or twice a week, either virtually or in person. I know some of you guys are on campus right now, but just doing the online version of this class. And then honestly, if you can meet with your PM, the more communication you could have with your PM. They're already a seasoned junior analyst. They've done one or two of these projects before, and they've done the advanced ones. So they're going to have a lot of insight on the best way to go. And kind of the way that it's going to work is that I'm going to meet with several project managers a week, and then they're going to meet with several projects a week. And so the idea is that we could kind of keep a bird's eye view on all the projects going on. So the more communication you have with them, the more help that they could get from us, and we could kind of keep this helping chain going along. So that's I would say that's kind of the best strategy to go approaching your weekly activities. Has everybody gotten access to these resources here? Has anybody not been able to get on Dribble or Trello?
I'm on Trello, but what is the purpose of Trello? I haven't seen anything to do with what we're supposed to do with Trello.
Yeah. So Trello, and I'll also mention this right now, my chat thing isn't popping up. So just get off your mic if you have a question, or get on your mic if you have a question. But Trello will make a lot more sense after you meet with your client and you guys kind of set up a a plan, a strategy. Essentially what it is a task manager. So your team lead or anybody on your team will kind of like create little post-its. Like it's kind of like just an organizational post-it task manager thing where like somebody will create a task that says, we need to make 50 phone calls to this many government organizations. They'll put that on Slack. And then what you could do is kind of either set up columns where each person has their own column. And so each person has like note cards on their own column. And so everybody could see what everybody's been assigned to do. You could also use it in a different way that I've seen work pretty well, is that you kind of set up, and actually I'll get off the presentation. I'll go to an interesting one here. If my internet will load at some point. Can you guys see my browser right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I hope my internet loads. Alrighty. All right, is everybody still there? Or am I?
Or he's still talking, thinking.
Oh, there he
Okay,
is.
here I
There
am.
he is.
Sorry, my internet went out. This is like, it's kind of ridiculous. This is the school. I'm at the school right now and it's like that. Okay, let me go here. Sorry for that. All right, can you guys all see this right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll show you a board here. This is kind of a way so this is one way that I think works really well here. They have like a pool column, a next up, a working, a completed, and then reviewed. And so as things get done, they move them over here, right? And that's kind of how they kind of track their progress through their project here. And so this is like a really kind of creative way. And then each person that, you can see these little dots right here, they've been assigned these projects here, these little tasks, and they kind of move it through, and eventually, it'll get to the reviewed section. So that's a nice one. And then if we kind of look at this construction report one, this is another project that's being worked on right now for the advanced side, is that they have unassigned tasks, nobody's really taking them on yet, and then they have a column for each member of the team. And then you can see there how people are working on things like that. And so Trello is like just a really good way to kind of manage some of the tasks that are going on, for your project. And so that's why we had you all sign up for Trello. Did that answer your question? Sorry, that took a little long time, but was that
I
good?
had a quick question.
Yeah.
For that timeline schedule that you posted earlier, I went on the Google Drive and tried to download that just so I could look at it. And it's not in any format that you can download.
Okay.
It's not a PDF, it's not a JPEG, it's like a notepad file.
Oh, that's weird. Let me, I'm going to take a note of that real quick.
I guess that wasn't a question, that was just kind of a statement.
Yeah, I'll take a look into that and I'll try to get the new one posted for you.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Okay. So any other questions on some of these resources here? Cool. so we'll kind of go on, ask the question, what is vigorous research, and why is it important? Does anybody have any idea of what vigorous research might mean? Please, anybody?
Like well-rounded, like you research from every angle.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. Any other comments?
Just sounds hard.
Just sounds hard. Yeah, vigorous is like, I guess like, what does vigorous usually mean? It usually kind of means like, I think well-rounded is a good way. I think it kind of every stone unturned in a way, right? Like if you do a vigorous kind of math proof, you've really kind of like without a doubt proven something, right? So kind of I think of it like that. I guess there's a bunch of different ways. Go ahead.
I just looked it up on Google. Vigorous says strong, healthy, and full of energy.
Ooh,
So your research probably has to be complete. It has to be backed up. You can't just like make stuff up. You know, it has to be valid.
yeah. Yeah, that's great. Those are great points. Those are great comments. And yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do here at the RBDC is just we're not gonna anything that you could search on Google, it's probably not gonna be an answer that people are gonna want like it's not gonna be a question that people want answered, right? They're really gonna want to know the stuff that takes vigorous research to find out. And so this is kind of a simple case. It's not really simple, but it's something that our business center director, he oversees all of these projects, Will Jensen. This is a project that he was on where he was working as an economist for the state of Idaho and had to give a presentation to like a dental association. And he basically, if you wanted to open up a dental office here in southeastern Idaho, I'll open up this question to you guys. If you wanted to open up a dental office here in Rexburg, what kind of questions would you want answered?
I'd want to know what the demand is like.
Okay. Yeah, great.
And the supply, see how many dentists are already here.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to go into an oversaturated market. What other questions?
You want to look at pricing, how much it would cost you for equipment and to run it, and how much to charge.
Okay, so some input costs there. That would be very important. Did somebody else have a comment?
Rules and regulations and permits.
Okay, yeah, definitely. What do you need to legally be a dentist? Those are all questions that this association kind of wanted to know about, right? Going kind of a little bit back to the supply, somebody brought up the supply. There's a thing called location quotient, which is something that Will Jensen brought up here. And essentially what you do is you just take the employment of a certain occupation divided by the total employment of a certain area, divide that by the national employment of a certain occupation divided by the total employment nationally. Does that make sense? And so in this case, what Will did was for every county, he took the total number of dentists divided by the total employment of the county, and he then divided that by the national level of dentists divided by the national employment level, right? And that gives you a number, and then you can see here in this kind of heat map, there's a number here. So what are some things that we notice about this map if red is like a really high number? Like the darker red it is, the higher the number it is.
Do you mean when you say higher the number? Do you mean there's already a lot of dentists in that area?
Yeah, well that's what that output would be, right? If the single number that's outputted, that means there's like a higher density of dentists in the area.
Well, you probably want to avoid the red areas, I would think. you want to get a lot
Yeah.
of this.
Right. So we can see here that it looks like Idaho Falls, whatever county that is like super saturated. And then over here, Boise, and then up here in Coeur d'Alene, like those are all super saturated areas. Okay, well, what about this white area here? What do we know about this area? Anybody familiar with this area of Idaho?
I don't know. Never mind.
Is that like
So,
way out in the boonies? Like there's not much out there?
yeah, so there's not much out there. In fact, if you guys are familiar, INL, the Idaho National Laboratory, is out there. And so it's basically a bunch of government-owned land, right? And everybody who works there, who works at INL, commutes in from the surrounding counties. So there's like no dentists in this. So if you're just looking at this plot, you might say, oh, that county looks like a good county. It looks like there's some, you know, possible market share that I could get in that county. But if you didn't have vigorous research, you wouldn't really know that that's actually not really possible. So later on, what Will did, he says like, okay, that's kind of like an all right indicator, but let's take a look at population, because that's almost better, right? It's like, we want to take a look at the number of dentists per population and compare that across counties, right? And so now we could see, you know, that number has been, that county, whatever county that is that INL is in, it's been smoothed out, meaning the number of dentists per number of people is like, you know, generally low, right? And Will Jensen, he tells this story a lot better than I can because he lived through this thing. But basically, he ended up at this dental association and had a lot of them left with like ghost looks on their face because they just opened a dental office in Idaho Falls. And they realized that they were in an oversaturated market, right? And so basically, it took a long time for Will to figure this out because according to the data, you know, I think it's Butte County. I think that's what the name of the county is. I can't remember. But according to the data, that county looked like a great place to open up shop as a dental office. But once he did a little bit more vigorous research, he was actually able to find that really wasn't going to be a good county to open up shop in. So that's what we kind of mean with vigorous research, is that, you know, a lot of times surface level things isn't always the best answer. Something that you could find on Google in 5 minutes is probably not going to be the level of research that your client wants. And so you guys, when you guys are approaching your data and you're approaching your client, think about really what the client wants and think about like what your data is saying, because, you know, sometimes, you know, oftentimes it's not telling the truth in a weird sense, which is kind of oxymoronic because like data, truth, like usually those things match up pretty well. Okay, so you might be asking this question, well, where do we find this kind of data? How do we get vigorous research? How do we get the data to do vigorous research? And so here, you want to break your research up into kind of two different aspects. There's the primary resources, and this is collecting raw data directly from the source. So that's like different kind of surveys that you send out to people, interviews that you personally do, focus groups that you personally institute, different kind of phone calls, or any type of, you know, anything that comes straight from the source that you personally get is the primary sources. And oftentimes this is very valuable because it's data that hasn't been collected yet. And oftentimes the question that we're trying to answer requires data that hasn't been collected yet. And so this is going to be a good source. And this is a lot of the times where the majority of your research weeks will be spent. You know, you might have to make a phone call to every county in Idaho, right? And that's how you'll get your data. And so this is kind of the grind of the data collection process here. Then there's something like called secondary resources, where you gather this data from already pre-existing sources of information. So you might have government databases, reliable databases like IBIS World and LexisNexis. There's also World Bank, and there's a ton of resources on the BYU Idaho library that they link to a bunch of things. And you could always email like the librarian. He's like the professional database guy here on campus, and he could answer any questions that you might have for him regarding kind of like databases. So one thing that we run into often here is defendable data. So oftentimes you might gather data that supports an argument, but does it come from a reliable resource? Does it come from a reliable place? So let's take a look down here. You know, what Neighborhood Scout versus UCR, what would you say is a better resource? Right off the bat, just like, can you tell by looking at the title?
UCR.
UCR, that might be good. Let's take a look at it. You come here, oh look, UCR links to the FBI crime reporting database. It's a .gov, as you can see up here. This is reliable. This is reliable information. We could tell we could tell because you can't get a .gov URL without special permissions, right? And so this is the FBI database. So you were right. Whoever said that, you were dead on. This is the reliable one. But you might end up going to Neighborhood Scout, and you're like, wow, you know, this website looks nice. It's super, you know, it's super kind of clean here. You could look up all this stuff. You could get all this data for every location. There's all this stuff here. Like, it's super, looks super official. But if you take a look, if you look deeper into the data, it's really not, because what this is kind of like a Yelp reviewer for neighbors. And so the way the data is collected is that people submit the reviews of like their neighbors and stuff like that. Now, does that not mean it's valuable? Like, could in some perspective, yeah, you might need this data, but obviously if you were to use this as your data source and it's coming from people who are making just observational claims about their neighborhood, that's different than the FBI gathering crime statistics and stuff like that for a certain area, right? And so you just have to be aware of where your data comes from, and kind of what the incentive was for the company or the institution that collected it, right? So those are good questions. Do you have any questions about that? Cool. Yeah, and then once again down here, population reference bureau versus the U.S. Census. Which one's going to be more reliable?
The census.
Yeah, it's the census one. This has a nice little name here. Bureau sounds nice and official, but if you go to these websites, you'll see the U.S. Census it's a .gov. It's supported by, you know, the National Bureau of Labor and Statistics. You know, all these things. So, yeah, exactly. Let's skip this slide here. All right, we're gonna watch this video real quick. Actually, yeah, let's watch the video. Is it? Is this video playing okay for you guys? If it's not, we don't have to watch it. Can everybody see the video?
It's more like a PowerPoint. It's just going really slow.
Okay. Let's skip the video because it'll be kind of pointless to watch it if it's going to cut out a lot. So sorry about that. It's a
Send
good
us the
video.
link.
Yeah, I'll post the link here. I'll post the link right now on Slack.
Were we gonna watch the whole thing?
No, just the first 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 30 seconds of it. Okay, so I just posted that on the Slack. If you guys want to watch that later, it's a great video about teamwork and stuff like that. Dang it, I wish we had better resources to show you guys for this stuff. There's another video. Here, I'll post a link to this as well. Has anybody ever heard of the growth mindset idea?
Yeah,
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
it is.
So for those of you guys who don't know, there was a psychologist, I guess a few years ago, quite a while ago, that did a study on school children, right? And what she did was she would take these students out in the hall and she would give them like quizzes or like have them draw something. She would basically kind of put them through like this little test. And what she would do is for some of the students, she would say, "Wow, you did such a good job. You're so smart." And she would compliment their intelligence, or she would compliment something like about themselves, right? And then for some other group of students, what she would do is she would tell the students, "Wow, you did such a good job. You worked so hard to do that." And she would kind of validate their hard work, and maybe not so much the outcome she wouldn't validate, but she would validate the hard work of the children. And she did this for a long time, and she tracked these students, right? And what she was able to find was that there's a statistical difference between students who approach, and even people, right? People who approach things, with what's called a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right? And basically what happened was at a later point in time, she would call the students back out and she would give them a harder test. And the students that she validated their intelligence, their ability to complete the work, they wouldn't do it. They would choose not to do the test because they ultimately didn't want to look dumber, they didn't want to look less intelligent. And so what she found was that these students were limiting themselves because they had been told so often that they were intelligent, that the students didn't want to fail, right? But she also found that the students that she complimented their hard work, she complimented their ability to think through the problems and stuff like that, regardless if they got it right or not, those students were more willing to take on the harder projects or like the harder tests or quizzes and stuff like that. And so basically what they've found is that if you approach problems afraid of being wrong, afraid of looking dumb, then it'll be really hard for you to continue to step up, to continue to gain a higher set of intelligence, right? But if you're willing to approach a problem, be willing to be wrong, but you validate yourself because you know that the hard work is going to eventually pay off, your ability to perform increases with each harder thing that you take on, right? And so we want to just kind of leave that message with you guys is that, think about when you're given a problem, when you're given a task that you're not sure what to do, think about what mindset you have, right? And I would urge you guys to, if you're in a fixed mindset, try to approach your problems with a growth mindset. If you've been given a task, if there's something you're supposed to do, you don't know anything, you can't figure it out, the worst thing you could do is to just stop, right? Because these projects are going to happen regardless, right? If you start being proactive, you start asking questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to make mistakes, as long as you're continuing to move forward. Then your ability is going to your ability to perform, your performance will just absolutely crush those around you, especially the people with the fixed mindsets. So I posted the link to that video. I think that's an amazing video. It's an amazing story. Do any of you have any comments on that?
Where did you post the link? Is it in ALPS?
I posted it in the ALPS Basic in the training channel.
Okay.
Cool. Well, that's the training we have for tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate you guys being here. It makes it a lot easier to do these trainings when we have people to talk with and stuff like that. We'll post the link on YouTube hopefully soon, within the next day or so. I just want to kind of open it up again one last time for any questions you guys might have, and then we'll close out the meeting.
I just have a quick question about project mentors. Who do we find out, like how do I find out who my project mentor is?
So if you, on your Slack channel for your team, if it hasn't, I'm going to introduce your project mentors to you. So what I'll do is post a message on your Slack channel saying, hi everybody, this person will be your project manager. If you haven't gotten that message on your Slack channel yet, it's because we still need to get your team a project manager.
Perfect,
So
thank you.
hopefully by end of day tomorrow, we'll have every team to have a project manager. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, go for it.
So I'm not super experienced in research. I was wondering how are we going to be doing most of the research through the engines on the school website?
You can, yes, the more you leverage those, the better. But they don't have to be. You could do surveys, you could do phone calls, you could use other resources that you find on your own. But we do have like a wide selection of resources to use. So you could potentially do that.
Okay, so I guess it's back up the information, get the information, and make sure it's valid any way you can, as long as you have good sources, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you this right now. A lot of times, you have to be this is one thing that I learned when I first started being a project, doing junior analyst, kind of working my way around some of these projects over the past few semesters. You have what I found is that a lot of times your intuition deceives you, and a lot of times an answer, how do I put this in the right way? An answer is an answer, right? And sometimes you just don't have the data to specifically answer the question. So I'll give you an example. I was doing a economic study for Sugar City, and Sugar City wanted to look at towns that grew from 200 people to 2,000 people, right? Because they want to grow their town. And so they wanted to see what other towns in the United States have done something similar, right? And they wanted to kind of get a snapshot of what a town at 2,000 people looks like. And they wanted, what home prices look like, what taxes look like, what commercial buildings, what kind of businesses do these cities have? You know what I mean? And so that's the kind of question they wanted answered. The only data I could find was county level data that had 2,000 people in it. There's not a lot of data that shows cities with 2,000 people and lower in it. Do you get what I mean? And so we kind of had to make this logical jump. We kind of had to compare counties that had 2,000 people in it and kind of use that as a proxy for looking at cities with 2,000 people in it. And I know I could already tell what you guys are thinking. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like counties are different things than cities, but the data just wasn't there to make the connection. And so in our research, we were transparent about it. Like we only had county level data, but we had to kind of go against that intuition and make these connections and build a case around it. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like you'll find that your intuition sometimes deceives you in order to get some of these projects like, done.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any last questions? Cool, excellent. Okay.
For the surveys getting data, are we allowed to post it on Facebook, see which one would come back? No.
If that was the audience that you were trying to reach, if you were looking for a general people, that might be the case. Typically that's not the audience that you're looking for. So for instance, you might get a client, they want to survey all the data science professors in the United States. Now, if your Facebook is nothing but data science professors, then yeah, like send that out to your Facebook.
I was assigned to a different kind of thing. It's more like see if there is a need for online licensing for pets. I thought maybe a lot of people may want to they might be interested to know about it or something.
Yeah. What I would do is I would run that by your project mentor and your team and make a decision there. I could see some potential problems doing it on Facebook, but like I said, sometimes you have to make adjustments to your strategy. And so I would that's probably more of a case by case basis. So your project mentor should be able to give you some good insight on that.
Okay.
Good question though. That's a really good question. Cool. Excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and end tonight's meeting. Thank you guys all for coming. Please reach out on Slack if you have anything else.
Okay,
Cool.
bye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye. Yeah, no problem. See ya.